I guess we should record. Okay. So welcome everyone to the Buddhist Path of Awakening class. We are continuing our study of Francesca Fremantle's book, Luminous, Emptiness, her commentary on the Tibetan Book of the Dead, or as she calls it, Liberation Through Hearing, which is more true to its original title. We're tonight going to finish talking about the Bardo of Dharmata, which we started talking about last week. But before we do that, I wanted to share some thoughts, things that I've heard, meanderings, about the nature of Bardo experience altogether, as well as reviewing a few things that she said at the beginning of this chapter, because I think it makes understanding what we're experiencing in the Bardo of Dharmata a little bit clearer. I think one of the questions that has come up in our Wednesday night discussion group about the book is more clarity about how this applies to our life and our practice here and now. So I'm going to share some ideas that I have about that, some things that I've heard. They're not necessarily the best or only ideas, and I hope if people are able to continue coming to the Wednesday night discussion group, and if you have other ideas or experiences, that you feel free to share them. But this is what I have to say for tonight. One of the things we have been talking about is the description in the Bardo of Dharmata of how the brilliant, bright light that we experience, the coming forth from the heart centers of the deities, that the Buddhas that present themselves in this Bardo, is bright and penetrating and somewhat painful and difficult to look at. And at the same time, there's a dull light, which represents or is the doorway to continuing to exist in one of the 6 realms of conditioned existence, samsara. And we've talked both in class and in discussion group about how this is analogous, if not exactly the same, as our experience in daily life of making choices between living in an authentic, awake, clear way and falling into habitual patterns. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that some more, and as well as some other things. But to go back to what Francesca Fremantle presented several chapters back, just the idea of Bardo altogether is that a Bardo is a gap or an in-between state, an interval that separates. And she also describes it as a crossroads where there are choices to be made. She also said that they're distinguished from each other because they indicate different modes of consciousness. In other words, our experience is different in the different Bardos. And yet underlying all those different experiences, the one thing is the same, is whether or not we're awake or not, whether or not we're present or not. And this is true in all the Bardos. And when we are present, when we are awake, it dramatically changes the nature of our experience. So it might be easier to get at some of what we experience in the Bardos, Bardo of dying, the Bardo of Dharmata, and then the Bardo that we'll be talking about in a couple of weeks, the Bardo of becoming, or Bardo of existence, as Francesca Fremantle calls it, by looking at the Bardos that we experience in this life. So there are 3 Bardos that we do experience: the Bardo of this life, where we are here and now, the Bardo of dreams, and the Bardo of meditation. So we're familiar with our existence here and now to some degree, and we have some degree of awareness or wakefulness that we experience in our everyday life. But then we also experience dream life. And our consciousness in dreams is different. We experience dreams in a very different way than we experience ordinary life. Often in the teachings, the experience of dreaming is used to point out the way in which we become caught up in duality. Because when we dream that we have a body of some kind, and we dream that there's a world around us in the dream. And yet, at the same time, just a little bit of reflection, it's clear that it's all our mind. That what we experience in the bardo of dreaming, even though there seems to be an external world and there seems to be a self, that in fact none of these truly exist in any real way, and that in fact whatever we experience as being self, and even more particularly whatever we experience as being other, can only be our own mind. And this is exactly what we're asked to recognize in the bardo of Dharmata, that whatever we experience is ultimately our own mind. Obviously, this involves a different idea of what mind is than what we conventionally think of our minds. A much broader, vaster, big mind sense of what mind is. But it's often used in the teachings as a way of pointing out how we impute or project or create a duality that in fact doesn't exist, that in fact it's all one mind and all the experience of one mind. And it's said that all of our experience in fact is this way. But the contrast that we can experience by looking at the dream bardo makes this particularly clear. There's another thing about mind, and this kind of came to me in a funny way. I've been reading a kind of a fantasy science fiction book that's actually very entertaining. But in the middle of it, and it's not particularly philosophical, but in the middle of it, one of the characters is talking about the experiences that she had that now seem dreamlike. And the other character says, well, what do you mean? And the character responds, and I quote, "You know how in a dream you do things that don't make no sense, but they still feel like they do? Like, I don't know, you might have your face painted green, and you just think, oh, it's green face day again, so that's okay." And the point of this again is something that we do in daily life, only perhaps not in such a bizarre or fantastical way as in dreams. But we create a story, we create narratives about ourselves. We create a sense that things that are actually very discontinuous, in fact, have a continuity. And this continuity is a created, imputed continuity. And it's very clear in dreams that one thing can lead to another, or seem to, but in fact they're very discrete, discontinuous perceptions in a dream. And that what happens is we impute a story, we confabulate, we put something together so that we don't see how discontinuous experiences really are. And again, if we really contemplate, really look at our experience in the bardo of dreams, we come to see that in fact, in perhaps a less bizarre way than in dreams, this is true in our daily life as well. And the result of this is that we don't see the arising and dissolving of events a great deal of the time, because we're creating this imputed narrative, storyline, dreamlike continuity that really isn't true. And if we think about our lives, if we slow down and just actually look at our experience, what we might have been feeling a half hour ago, what we might have been feeling at lunchtime, what we might have been feeling, dwelling on this morning, let alone 5 years ago, 10 years ago, however far back, that it's actually in fact a little less continuous than it seems to be. And that the same kind of sense that we have in dreams, that we do things, that we put things together that don't really make sense when we look, that this is again a quality of this ability of our mind to create stories and create narratives and to put things together in a way that makes sense. Another way that I've experienced it in my own life is talking to somebody that I might have met and talking about how I got to be where I am now, or whatever it is that I'm doing. And I can present a story where one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. But if I go back and think about how I felt at certain points in my life, I in fact had no idea a lot of the time what was going to lead to what. It just did. And again, it's this ability to create a story, a dream, a seeming continuity where it doesn't really exist. So these are a couple of things that I think we can look at in terms of the experiences in the bardos as well. And then the last thing I wanted to say about the bardos that we experience in this life is the bardo of meditation. if we look at our experience in meditation, here's an interesting question to think about. I'm not going to say a whole lot about it, but as she says, one of the ways that Francesca Fremantle says we can distinguish the bardos is because they indicate different modes of consciousness. So how is our experience in meditation the same or different than the experience in the rest of our life? How is consciousness different in meditation than in our ordinary life? Or is it different at all? And it's just something to think about. I do want to say a few things about it, because it's in saying what I'm about to say, I want to hopefully avoid the danger of saying there's a particular goal that we should be looking for in meditation practice. This is exactly what Trungpa Rinpoche warned us about in terms of spiritual materialism, that approaching meditation thinking that we have to create or we should create a particular state of mind or state of consciousness or whatever you want to call it, actually gets in the way. That if there's a concept of what we should experience, it gets in the way of experiencing what we are experiencing. It's sort of like the joke about people in Maine, you can't get there from here. Except it's really you can't get here from there. And in fact, trying to get anywhere is an obstacle because we're already here. And that's why there's so much emphasis in meditation instruction on learning to relax the mind and let go of effort, allowing ourselves to just settle into our present experience. That the main point is simply being present, aware that we're aware, as Trungpa Rinpoche says. But when we do that, what happens is we do seem to experience something different in terms of our self-awareness. And that it's not that this can't happen. As a matter of fact, it does happen throughout our lives, but it's a little easier perhaps to experience in formal meditation practice, just because, among other things, we are less likely to be involved in other activities and distractions, and we do things like take a good posture to help ourselves settle a little bit. But in fact, we can experience awareness at any time. But that through engaging in meditation practice, we become more aware of our capacity to wake up and simply be present. And we begin to see that there's a difference in our experience when we're present as opposed to when we're distracted or just absorbed in thought. We might even come to see how being distracted, we can be completely absent-minded in our experience, that we can become so absorbed in thought and so absorbed in something that we're preoccupied with that we're minimally aware of our surroundings altogether. So that there is some difference. There is some difference in at least what we experience, or what the bardo of meditation allows us to begin to experience. It's important to understand in all of this, because it's easy to start thinking with this that the ideal state is some kind of non-conceptuality or absence of thoughts, and to begin seeing thoughts as enemies, which is again kind of a funny way to look at it, because thoughts are our own mind. In fact, what we're taught to do, what we're working with in meditation, is just simply seeing thoughts as thoughts, so that we don't necessarily identify with every thought that we have, and we don't necessarily get lost in thought after thought in quite the same way. But in any case, the critical, that's probably not the best way to put it, strike that from the record. The idea is that we learn to just rest in awareness. We learn to recognize our awareness, and we develop again some sense of self-awareness, not in the sense of self-consciousness. Self-awareness in this sense is something much more immediate than that. It's just that we know our experience. We know what we're experiencing. In the Buddhist philosophical traditions, they have all kinds of arguments to attempt to clarify. And the argument for self-awareness is actually very simple. On the basis of memory, experience is established. In other words, the fact that we could remember things means that we had to experience them. And on the basis of experience, self-awareness is established, which again doesn't mean self-awareness in any kind of broad conceptual sense of, for instance, knowing how we come across to others, although it could lead to that. It's just more basically that we know our experience here and now, right in the moment. and that self-awareness is kind of a problematic figure of speech, which I'm going to say something about a little bit more when I talk about what Francesca Fremantle says about self-display and projection. But that we know our experience. We're present with our experience. We are our experience ultimately. So we become more aware of that. And with that, we have more capacity to just wake up in the moment. And this also relates to some of what we talked about in the last couple of weeks, again, about the especially the dull light that we experience in the Bardo of Dharmata, being brought back into habitual patterns, brought back into a sense of I and other and the sixth, some sort of existence within the six realms. So I was actually looking for something else, but what I came across were some excerpts from a seminar on karma that Trungpa Rinpoche did at Karma Choling way back when. And it's important in talking about karma, because that's really the force that's kind of pushing us forward through the bardos, and in particular it becomes very important in the bardo of becoming, the bardo of existence, where we start looking for another body. To think about karma as a process rather than as a thing, and to understand something about karma in two senses. One is that karma kind of represents a certain momentum, or we're impelled in a certain direction. And we experience that in our lives, that things come up and we start feeling a particular way. It's like the current in a river almost, or momentum is the word that's sometimes used. Sometimes it's described as the wind of karma. And the other is habituation, that through, that karma is, we become habituated to doing certain things by doing certain things. And that that's, I think probably the two, if we understand something about the karma as momentum to do things in a particular way, and habituation is the direction that we become habituated to go, then I think that helps us understand a little bit. So now to quote Trungpa Rinpoche on karma, but this does relate to the bardos as well. As a result of situations in life that have already occurred, we have ended up being what we are now. Our present state of mind, our present spiritual development, and our domestic scene have been karmically determined up to this point. The birth of further karma constantly occurs through the ongoing reliving of the past. We reproduce our nest, ground, or home so that we can function continuously. Therefore, the practice of meditation is the only path that can work with the karmic situation, with karma as such. Karma in this case is the psychological continuity of impulse, emotions, and subconscious mental processes that go on. These processes feed on themselves all the time and develop themselves further, constantly on and on. Unless there is a way of not feeding the subconscious mind, not feeding the neurosis of mind, there is no way of preventing karmic situations. It doesn't matter whether we're dealing with good karma or bad karma. Both amount to the same thing from this point of view. The attitude of spiritual materialism, of being goal-oriented and wanting to enrich one's ego, enrich one's purpose, and become better than what one is the expression of subconscious gossip. In other words, ambition is a further feeding of the karmic situation. It sows further seeds of karma. Even if we are sowing seeds of good karma, we are nonetheless encircled in a samsaric fortress. So from this point of view, meditation practice is a way of stepping out of the karmic situation altogether, transcending both good and bad. It is transcending psychological materialism as well as spiritual materialism. So this is, again, an aspect of the bardo of meditation. It's where we're able to wake up, not actually experience our fundamental intrinsic awareness, which is the bright light, and perhaps make a different choice when we wake up, when that possibility appears to us. He goes on to say just a little bit more from this seminar. There could be a misunderstanding here. I don't mean, talking about nowness, the experience of nowness, the experience of awake. I don't mean to say that nowness is absence of discursive thoughts. Rather, it is that the discursive thoughts, or any kind of emotional thoughts one might have been given lots of room, lots of space to function. so they don't have to fight for their territory anymore. Nowness is a state without struggle. You don't have to create the space. Space is not a product of anything at all. It's a question of opening to the situation of the space. The space is there already, so you don't have to manufacture it. Since it is there already and it was never created, the experience of space is self-existing and self-perpetuating. So I think all of this is just a way, again, of saying something about what we come to discover in the bardo of meditation. And this applies directly to our experience in the bardos after death as well. Are we able to wake up? Are we able to see what we experience in the bardo of Dharmata? All the lights, all the colors, all the sounds, the presentation of the deities, if that's how we experience it. Are we able to wake up in that moment and see it as our mind, as the true nature of our mind? Again, just to say one last thing about what we experience in meditation, and this also relates to the sense of continuity and discontinuity, is that when we're able to settle into present awareness, we experience a sense of momentariness, just this present moment, the clarity and vividness and freshness of just this present moment. And come to realize that the only real continuity is the continuity of awareness, and that awareness is luminous, but it's also empty, in that when we look, there's nothing we can really pin down. And this is the quality of clarity emptiness, luminous emptiness, ultimately appearance emptiness that we talk about. In the Vajrayana in particular, there's an emphasis on recognition of the true nature of mind, recognition of Rigpa, recognition of awake mind, whatever we want to call it. And in the same way, a lot of what we are being enjoined to do through studying this material is develop enough familiarity with the nature of our mind so that when we do experience the fantastic visions in the bardo, we recognize them as our own mind, that we recognize them as not being truly external. There are a couple of other things just before I get into the actual what I'm supposed to talk about tonight that she brings up. One is the idea of inseparability, or two-in-one as she calls it, because a lot of the things that we experience in the bardo, or a lot of things that are described, are described as being in union or inseparable or two-in-one. And what this means, and again, this relates to the bardo of meditation as well, is, for instance, one example that's given is a candle flame. The candle flame, we can describe a candle flame in terms of its light or in terms of its heat, for instance. In the philosophical schools of Buddhism, each one of these would be considered what's called a conceptual isolate. We can clearly conceptually separate heat and light. But when we actually look at our experience right in the moment, they're actually inseparable. They're one and the same thing, experientially in the moment. So again, there's a difference between how we experience things from the point of view of conceptual mind, and how, when in meditation, when we're able to relax the grip of conceptual mind, we actually experience reality, which is that, yes, we can conceptually isolate, but at the same time, it's all one experience. And this is true for a number of things. It's true in regard to appearance emptiness, luminosity emptiness, the deities being seen in union, inseparability of male and female. It's even true in terms of the 5 Buddha wisdoms, which are all seen as different aspects of really what's one and the same thing. And when we get too caught up in looking at all these, as they say, conceptual isolates, it takes away from the direct experience, which is the intensity of the moment, now and in the bardo. And then the last thing is her description of projection or self-display, which is, again, her attempt as a translator to communicate to us this idea again that our actual experience in the moment, when we're fully present, is actually non-dual. and that the sense of I and other, inside, outside, external, internal, is conceptually created. It's a conceptual imputation. That if we actually look at our experience right in the moment, it's all one mind, all our mind. And she has, I've noticed this when having listened to different talks by different people who translate, that translators are always trying to find what's the best word to communicate the idea that's expressed in Sanskrit or Tibetan. So she talks about projection, and she says that Trungpa Rinpoche often spoke of the way we perceive the world as projection, that whatever happens in the bardo is one's own projections, which is meant to convey the idea that all the visions that occur in the bardo come from one's own mind and are the manifestations of our own nature. And she worries that the use of the word projection may give the wrong idea that the visions of the deities are false and nothing but projections of confused mind. So she prefers the term self-display. And what that means is that the display and that there's no separation between, it's not self in the sense of an ego self. It's just purely the same idea as self-awareness, aware that we're aware. Some translators have tried to use the term reflexive awareness to indicate that it's awareness becoming aware of itself. And that again, we may have moments of this when we recognize in meditation practice, for instance, that we become distracted. That's a moment of awareness recognizing itself and recognizing that we've become lost. And in the same way that the thoughts are merely appearances that happen within the greater space of awareness and are, again, just a reflection of mind or the reflected appearances of mind, in the same way, what we experience in the bardo is nothing other than the nature of our own mind. It's just not the nature of our mind as we habitually look at it and think about it. And that's why some of the symbolism becomes so important. I was actually going to say more about symbolism because it's actually an interesting idea, but I actually looked ahead and she says the next chapter actually has some very good pieces on symbolism. But the symbolism of the deity and understand the deities that we experience in the bardo and understand what they mean are a way of, again, helping us develop the ability to recognize our own mind. And that's what we're asked to do over and over again, is to recognize the true nature of our mind. The descriptions of the 5 Buddha wisdoms are descriptions of our mind in its enlightened sense. So basically, she prefers the term self-display in the sense that whatever we experience is the display of our own mind. And that recognizing that is a critical part of being able to recognize our experience in the bardo. So all of that is meant to hopefully help us get through days 4, 5, and 6, which is where we're about to go. So with this, I actually want to just read the instructions from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And remember, the idea of this book is that we're actually reading this to a person who's died. And the hope is, again, to help them recognize. And so in the beginning of the bardo of Dharmata, there are very specific instructions. O child of noble family, listen carefully without distraction. So distraction, again, is really asking people to experience something of the meditative state of being settled and present with the experience. There are 6 bardo states. And goes through the bardo states. What is called, O child of noble family, now what is called death has arrived. You are not alone in leaving the world. It happens to everyone, so do not feel desire and yearning for this life. Even if you feel desire and yearning, you cannot stay. You can only wander in samsara. Do not desire, do not yearn. Remember the 3 jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. O child of noble family, whatever in terrifying projections appear in the bardo of Dharmata, do not forget these words, but go forward remembering their meaning. The essential point is to recognize with them. Now when the bardo of Dharmata dawns upon me, I will abandon all thoughts of fear and terror. I will recognize whatever appears as my own projection, or she would prefer to say as my own self-display, and know it to be a vision of the bardo. Now that I have reached this crucial point, I will not fear the peaceful and wrathful ones, my own projections. So again, the instruction is to settle the mind, remember teacher, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Let go of fear, let go of attachment, and recognize your own mind. So we talked last week about the first 3 days of the Bardo of Dharmata, which began with the Buddha Vairochana representing the Buddha family, the notion of all-accommodating space, the Akshobhya representing the Vajra family, the mirror-like wisdom in its enlightened sense, and Ratnasambhava representing the Ratna family, Ratna wisdom, of wisdom of equanimity. So at this point, well, what it says in the book is, by being shown in this way, liberation is certain, however weak one's capacities may be. Yet even after being shown like this many times, there are people whose good opportunities have run out, such as those who have done great evil or let their samaya practice degenerate, who will not recognize. So again, the importance of recognition. Disturbed by desire and neurotic veils, they will be afraid of the sights and sounds and will escape. So then on the fourth day, which is Blessed Amitabha's circle of deities will invite them, together with the light path of the hungry ghosts built from desire and meanness. To show them again, one should call the dead person by name and say these words. So this is what's literally read to the person who is in the Bardo of Dharmata. O child of noble family, listen without distraction. On the fourth day, a red light, the purified element of fire, will shine, and at the same time, blessed Amitabha will appear before you from the western realm, the blissful. His body is red in color, he holds a lotus in his hand, and sits on a peacock throne, embracing his consort, Pandavarasini. He is accompanied by the two male bodhisattvas, Avalokiteshvara and Manjushri, and the two female bodhisattvas, Gita and Aloka, so that 6 Buddha forms appear out of the space of rainbow light. The red light of the skanda of perception, in its basic purity, the wisdom of discrimination, brilliant red, adorned with discs of light, luminous and clear, sharp and bright, will come from the heart of Amitabha and his consort, and pierce your heart so that your eyes cannot bear to look at it. Do not be afraid of it. At the same time, together with the wisdom light, the soft yellow light of the hungry ghosts will also shine. Do not take pleasure in it. Give up desire and yearning. So this is what appears on day 4. Amitabha, and who's red, because Amitabha connects with the Padma family, and which is connected with the fire element. And what she talks about here in terms of the symbolism, and symbolism meaning literally representing itself, the symbolism of this altogether relates to the transmutation of passion, because this is really the klesha that is tied to this particular family, and it's because of our attachment still to passion that we haven't recognized at this point. So the idea of the symbolism, I guess you could say it's sort of like a picture is worth 1,000 words, that being able to recognize, being able to see something in the symbolism gives a flash of recognition, a flash of a reminding. And she goes through in describing the visions on the 4th day with describing some of the symbolism that of the different objects that are presented along with the particular Buddhas. So again, Amitabha is red, which is the red of passion, but also the red of the discriminating awareness wisdom that we talked about some weeks back. That both the lotus and also the peacock throne, which is described, really relate to transmutation, the transmutation of passion into compassion. That the lotus, for instance, grows in mud, and yet when it blooms is a beautiful flower, completely free of mud. So the idea is, again, that it represents something that can grow out of any circumstance, and yet in itself be pure and untainted, unpolluted. As she says, it feeds on the rich manure of the poisons and transmutes into an enlightenment. And ditto with the peacock throne. It's said that in Indian lore, that the peacock is able to eat poison, which it transmutes into the beautiful tail feathers. So again, we have two symbols here of transmutation, of taking something that ordinarily could be poison, the klesha of passion in particular, and transmuting that, recognizing its wisdom essence as compassion. And that Amitabha and consort Pandavarasini are actually on a throne of lotus, which again, and a peacock throne as well, which kind of represents in itself being able to ride this situation, ride the energy of passion without being overwhelmed by it, without being caught up in it. She connects this also with the, in terms of enlightened activity, with magnetizing. The Padma has the quality of drawing in, magnetizing. And as she says, the awakened person uses the powers of attraction to draw others to the truth instead of seducing them for selfish ends. The idea is in recognizing this, recognizing that we have this capability, that we are able to work with passion in such a way that we can actually manifest compassion. And that, as she says, both the peacock and the lotus are symbols that express the unconditional openness of compassion, that the ability to feed and absorb anything, welcoming any situation, however negative it may seem. The bodhisattvas that appear along with the deities, Avalokiteshvara is the bodhisattva of compassion. It's Avalokiteshvara who presents the Heart Sutra, inspired by the power of the Buddha. And Manjushri is the bodhisattva of wisdom. He holds and symbolically holds a sword, which represents the freeing power of prajna. The sword represents prajna that sees through concept and relative truth and is able to recognize emptiness and recognize see things exactly as they are. So between the two, we have the heart aspect of compassion, and as she says, the intellectual aspect of compassion, that it's actually emptiness that makes genuine compassion possible, that recognizing something of the illusory nature of things so that we're able to awaken people to ultimate truth. And that this is what's being manifested in front of us on the fourth day, is all this power, all of this clarity, all of this brilliant light of purified passion, manifesting as compassion. And then you have Dakini's Gita playing a stringed instrument that represents the hearing consciousness, and Aloka, light, which she says represents the purification of thoughts of the future. But again, the critical thing is this dazzling light blazing forth from the heart centers of the deities, Amitabha and Pandavarasini in union, is the light of the skanda of perception transmuted into, she calls it the investigative knowledge, but Trungpa Rinpoche called it discriminating awareness knowledge. The ability to see things as they are, to be able to see both separate and together all at one time, so that a person isn't caught up in conceptual isolates, but can see very clearly exactly what things are, and at the same time see the underlying emptiness that is true of all things that we experience. As she says, perception, the act of perception links some subject and object together, which, again, if we look at our right in the moment experience of nowness in meditation, that's exactly how we experience it. There's just perceiving. There's not a sense of I and other. That's attributed after. So perception links subject and object together. But as she says, in the ordinary state, the dualistic distinction between them always remains. And that's what gives rise to emotional reactions. We think there's a person here and something out there that we want to draw in, hold on to, or if we don't like it, push away and reject. And that discriminating awareness wisdom overcomes this. It just sees things exactly as they are without being caught up in some kind of imputed duality. Some sort of belief in an ego and an external world, and an ego that needs to collect and take in what's good and push away and reject what's not good. So what we need to do at this point, if we're able to recognize that this is not really separate from the nature of our own mind, is to let go and dissolve into the radiance of Amitabha's heart. It's just a complete letting go and dissolving. And to do that, we have to let go of grasping and attachment. We have to, because if we become self-protective, if we become afraid, if we become confused, if we give into habit, we end up in the realm of the hungry ghost. So as it says in the text itself, do not be afraid of it. At the same time, together with the wisdom light, the soft yellow light of the hungry ghost will also shine. Do not take pleasure in it. Give up desire and yearning. At that time, under the influence of intense desire, you will be terrified and escape from the sharp, bright red light, but you'll feel pleasure and attraction toward the soft yellow light of the hungry ghosts. And again, remind the person who is in the Bardo of Dharmata, the person to whom, if we were reading this book for someone's benefit, we would remind them again, do not fear the red light, sharp and brilliant, luminous and clear, but recognize it as wisdom. Let your mind rest in it, relaxed in a state of non-action. Be drawn to it with faith and longing. If you recognize it as your own natural radiance, even if you do not feel devotion, and do not say the inspiration prayer, all the forms and red lights and rays will merge inseparably with you, and you will attain enlightenment. If you cannot recognize it in this way, supplicate it with devotion, thinking, it is the light ray of blessed Amitabha's compassion. I take refuge in it. It is the light ray hook of blessed Amitabha's compassion. Feel devotion and do not escape. Even if you escape, it will stay with you inseparably. Do not be afraid. Do not be attracted to the soft yellow light of the hungry ghost. That is the light path of unconscious tendencies accumulated by your intense desire. If you are attracted to it, you will fall into the realm of hungry ghosts and experience unbearable misery from hunger and thirst. It is an obstacle blocking the path of liberation, so do not be attracted to it, but give up your unconscious tendencies, your habituation. Do not yearn for it. Feel longing for the luminous, brilliant red light, and say this inspiration prayer with intense, one-pointed devotion on blessed Amitabha and consort. When through intense desire I wander in samsara on the luminous light path of discriminating wisdom, may blessed Amitabha go before me, his consort Pandavarasini behind me. Help me to cross the Bardo's dangerous pathway and bring me to the perfect Buddha state. By saying this inspiration prayer with deep devotion, the person we're reading to will dissolve into rainbow light in the heart of blessed Amitabha, infinite light, with his consort, and become a Sambhogakaya Buddha in the Western realm, the blissful. So that's the fourth day of vision in the Bardo of Dharmata. So again, I think over and over again, what we're asked to do is recognize, relax, let go, and dissolve into the bright light. And recognize that it really is just a manifestation, the expression, the nature of our own mind. It always says, interestingly, that it's impossible not to be liberated this way, but then it goes on to say, yet even after being shown in this way, sentient beings cannot give up their unconscious tendencies because of long habituation. And under the influence of envy and evil karma, they are afraid of the sounds and lights. They're not caught by the light ray hook of compassion, but wander downwards to the fifth day of the Bardo state. So in the fifth day, what manifests is the green light of Amoga City, representing the karma family. This also connects with the air element. The karma family connects with the element of air. And it's the last of the 5 Buddha families that appears. Karma, in this sense, in its enlightened manifestation, represents perfect activity. It embodies the energy or skill that accomplishes or puts into action the qualities of all the families. So the deity that we experience here is Amoga City, who's green, and its consort is Tara, the feminine embodiment of compassion. Here it's called Samaya Tara. And again, they both hold bells, which represent emptiness, and double vajras, which is a crossed vajra, which represents unobstructed activity in all directions. The throne, in this case, is borne aloft by Kanaras, which are kind of Garuda-like or bird-like celestial musicians. And these, again, represent the accomplishment of the 4 karmas and demonstrate the energy and speed of the karma family. There are again bodhisattvas and dakinis that appear with them in this manifestation. The one bodhisattva is Sarvanavarana Vishkamban, remover of all obstacles, holding a bell and book. The book representing teachings of the Dharma, which shows how to overcome difficulties and hindrances to liberation. And on the left, Vajrapani, holding a Vajra, symbolizing energy and activity, and also represents the afflicted mental consciousness, which is the seventh consciousness. But even this is pure in this state, so it's representing consciousness in its wisdom form, not in its neurotic form. In front is Dakini Ganda, representing fragrance or incense, which is said to purify thoughts of the present moment. And the last female bodhisattva, according to Francesca Fremantle, could either be Navidya, which representing food, or dance. Food in the sense of what nourishes the awakened mind. And this relates to the skanda of the fourth skanda, conditioning or mental formations, which leads to worldly actions. And in its neurotic sense, all of karmic cause and effect. But in this case, in its enlightened form, represents the wisdom of all accomplishing action. And this is shining out as, again, pure green light. So at this point, the instructions, as she says, become more insistent. So let's see if that's the case. O child of noble family, listen without distraction. On the fifth day, a green light, the purified element of air, will shine, and at the same time, blessed Amoga City, Lord of the Circle, will appear before you from the green northern realm. His body is green in color. He holds a double vajra in his hand and sits on a throne of shang birds, soaring in the sky, embracing his consort Samayatara. The green light of the skanda of concept in its basic purity, the all-accomplishing action wisdom, brilliant green, luminous, clear, sharp, and terrifying, adorned with discs of light, will come from the heart of Amoga City and pierce your heart so that the eyes cannot bear to look at it. But again, the instruction is the same. Do not be afraid of it. It is a spontaneous play of your own mind. So rest in the supreme state, free from activity and care. This would relax the mind, let go, in which there is no near or far love or hate. At the same time, together with the wisdom light, the soft red light of the jealous gods, caused by envy, will also shine on you. Meditate so that there is no difference between love and hate. But if your intelligence is weak, then simply do not take pleasure in it. And then again, under the influence of intense envy, this is our habituation due to karma that we talked about earlier, but due to our habituation, under the influence of intense envy, you'll be terrified and escape from the sharp, brilliant green light, but feel pleasure and attraction toward the soft red light of the jealous gods. At that moment, do not be afraid of the green light, sharp and brilliant, luminous and clear, but recognize it as wisdom. Let your mind rest in it, relaxed in a state of non-action, and supplicate it with devotion, thinking, it is the light ray of blessed Amoga City's compassion. I take refuge in it. It is the light ray hook of blessed Amoga City's compassion, called the action-accomplishing wisdom. So long for it, and do not escape. Even if you escape, it will stay with you inseparably. Do not be afraid of it. Do not be attracted to the soft red light of the jealous gods. That is the inviting path of karma accumulated by your intense envy. If you are attracted to it, you will fall into the realm of the jealous gods and experience unbearable misery from fighting and quarreling. It's an obstacle blocking the path of liberation, so do not be attracted to it, but give up your unconscious tendencies. Feel longing for the luminous, brilliant green light, and say this is inspiration prayer with intense one-pointed concentration. When through intense envy I wander in samsara on the luminous light path of action-accomplishing wisdom, may blessed Amoga City go before me, his consort Samayatara behind me. Help me to cross the Bardo's dangerous pathway and bring me to the perfect Buddha state. By saying this inspiration prayer with deep devotion, you will dissolve into rainbow light in the heart of blessed Amoga City and his consort and become a Sambhogakaya Buddha in the northern realm, perfected actions. So If at any point we actually are able to recognize, if we are able to let go into the bright light, if we are able to dissolve into the the light rays and the compassion of any one of the Buddhas, then we no longer experience the rest of the bardo. We're at that point we've achieved liberation. And so the point is that over and over again we have opportunities to wake up, and in the bardo completely let go, completely dissolve, completely wake up. But again, time and time again, when we fail to recognize, when we fail to wake up, we end up continuing our journey through the bardo of Dharmata. But again, so this is what the experience is on the 5th day. On the 6th day, again, if we're not able to recognize, if we're not able to make a connection with any one of the 5 deities, the 5 Sambhogakaya manifestations of the ultimately enlightened nature of our own mind, then on the 6th day, all 5 appear simultaneously. Like I said last week, it was sort of like the grand finale of the sort. And all appear exactly as before. Each appears in a circle of their own light, surrounded by rainbows of the 5 colors, white, blue, red, yellow, and green, with Vairocana and consort white in the center. To the east, or the front, if it was, would be Akshobhya, representing the Vajra family. In the south, Ratnasambhava for the Ratna family. To the west, Amitabha, the Padma family, and to the north, Amoga Siddhi, of the Karma family. So these all appear at once to us, and again, we have a chance to recognize. We have a chance, if we're able to let go of fear, if we're able to let go of dualistic perception and just relax into the true nature of mind, we have another chance to wake up, as they all appear to us. It's also said at this point that there are 4 gates that appear, and that these gates, each gate has guardians that appear in wrathful form to protect sacred space. And again, the idea of the wrathfulness is that they allow us the opportunity to wake up. And it's the beginning of being able to experience something of the wrathful energy that we really experience with the wrathful deities, that it's actually wrathful compassion. It's like situations in life where we're given a lot of messages, but if we ignore the softer messages, eventually things get harder and harder. Instead of just a gentle reminder that we should slow down, we get into some kind of an accident, or we get kind of sharper feedback from the world around us. And we could think of this as a manifestation of wrathful compassion. That's not often what happens, because we don't see it that way. We see it as some kind of an attack, or often people do, and end up hardening further. But if in fact we can see the things that happen to us, even the things that from one point of view are completely unwanted, as messages to wake up, and we're able to let go of resentment or some kind of feeling of victimhood or whatever it is, then it's an opportunity to wake up. And that's really what the idea of these wrathful forms represent. She says that each gate is protected by both male and female guardians, and that each guardian is linked symbolically to purifying the 4 false views. One is the view of impermanence, taking things to be real in a way that they're not, which is exactly why when we're doing meditation, we get caught up in thoughts, because we take them to be real, we identify with them, and we don't see thoughts as thoughts. So it's letting go of some sense of permanence or solidity to things. So that's one false view. The second false view is the view of extinction or nihilism, that there is nothing more. The 4th false view is a belief in a self, which kind of relates to the view of permanence. And then finally, the belief in characteristics, that again, it's looking at things and seeing things to be separate in a way that they're not, by looking at defining characteristics, instead of seeing the underlying emptiness and interdependence that is actually true of everything we experience. So again, there are 4 gates, and there's a lot of symbolism around the different objects that they hold, which again are really meant to be reminders. The idea of the symbolism is to, again, reminders of different aspects of enlightened mind and enlightened experience. She connects the four guardians with the four, what she calls the four indestructible enlightened activities, which are more commonly called the four karmas, and that the guardian of the Eastern Gate represents pacifying, which she describes as overcoming aggression and calming negativities of mind and body. And that this represents also the principle of invincible peace, complete equanimity. That is actually the title of this chapter. That it's the equanimity that comes with fully resting in awakened mind, where we just see what arises as impermanent, empty, and don't get as hooked by whatever we experience. That we experience a quality of pacifying in our meditation practice when we're able to relax and let go and just see things as they are without necessarily judging one way or another. The southern gate is Yamantaka, representing who's the destroyer of death. It's a translation of Yamantaka. And she says this purifies the view of nihilism, or the view of extinction, and represents the action of enriching. So this is the action where enriching action, which you could think of as giving as an activity, but it also represents reflecting, so that it could be activity in which we help someone recognize the richness, the capability that they already have. So it's not necessarily, I mean, it can be giving something, but it can also just literally be helping a person to recognize the richness that they already have, which is what we're asked, what we're being directed to do over and over again in all these teachings, to recognize that what we seem to think is external and perhaps frightening is actually the true nature of our mind, which when we recognize it for what it is brilliant and clear and very powerful. So that, again, the enriching quality, enriching action can be more that, helping a person to recognize the wealth, the capability that they already have, but perhaps don't see in themselves. And the next gate is the Western Gate, which is red and represents, again, connected with the Padma family, and represents the karma of magnetizing, pacifying, enriching, magnetizing, which she describes as attracting, that which attracts and subdues through the energy of compassion. That whatever we need to bring our practice to completion, whatever we need to bring to our practice, is drawn to us spontaneously and brought under our control. It's also the magnetizing quality that draws in others. And again, but the main idea is drawing into ourselves what we need, and relates also, similar to enriching, with recognizing and allowing it to express itself, the qualities in ourselves that are enlightened. And finally, the Northern Gate, which is green, again representing the Karma family, is the action of destroying. And this is seeing through, letting go. Sometimes it's called capturing, by the way, but it's, again, seeing through anything that ultimately obstructs. It's seeing through points of view, habitual mind, anything that ultimately obstructs our practice. So basically what she says, within these four guardians, there's no escape from the true nature of our mind. And she says the mandala that manifests on this sixth day represents the primordial purity of every aspect of our being. But again, if we're unable to recognize it, as she says, and cling to the illusion of ego, we don't really escape from the brilliant light. We just create a temporary hiding place among the fantasy worlds of the six realms of existence. But even there, the six Buddhas manifest in each realm. So there's always the possibility to wake up. There's always the possibility of connecting with the true nature of our mind. And she gives some description of the six Buddhas that appear in the six realms. And it's interesting because each Buddha appears in a way that's particularly effective or helpful within that realm. So, for instance, the Buddha that appears in the God realm is white, representing, and this represents purifying pride, but it also has that sense of purity that would appeal to the gods. So, and this, what the Buddha in this realm is shown to be doing is playing a stringed instrument so that it's enchanting and intoxicating, but also music conveys the sense of impermanence. Because remember, that's ultimately the downfall of the God realm, is that it's not permanent. And reminding the gods of impermanence is a very profound and powerful teaching. As it is for any of us when we get caught up in God realm thinking, is remembering that it's not permanent. And as is said in the teachings, that there is nothing sadder than a god about to die. In the jealous god realm, the Buddha that appears there wears armor, because that's what jealous gods understand, is conflict and competition and envy and jealousy. And as she says, subdues the rampant paranoid energy and speed of this state of mind by gentle, invincible strength of the true warrior. So this I think of as what the Buddha in this realm manifests is something of the complete presence that, for instance, in the Japanese tradition, the complete presence of a samurai, where they conquer without even needing to take action, because they're so fully present, so fully awake that others just are able to see the power of how they're manifesting right on the spot. In the human realm, the Buddha appears as a homeless wanderer with alms bowl and a beggar staff, teaching the power of renunciation and non-attachment. Again, letting go of worldly pursuits, and in order to practice Dharma and realize something that's truly lasting, as opposed to all of the temporary pleasures and attractions that we experience in the human realm. In the animal realm, the Buddha that appears there holds a book that represents overcoming ignorance. Ignorance or dullness is the main klesha of the animal realm. In the hungry ghost realm, the Buddha offers divine food in a jeweled dish. Again, it's food that truly nourishes, as opposed to attachment to things that, again, give at best only limited nourishment. And in the hell realm, the Buddha holds a vessel of cooling water and warming fire to alleviate the immediate pain, of the hot and cold hells. So, in any case, this is this vast mandala that appears on the sixth day. All of these different manifestations, and it's really our last chance to wake up before we experience the next set of visions that occur in the Bardo of Dharmata. She says above the entire mandala is the Samantabhadra and Samantabhadri, representing universal goodness. And once again, the instruction is to just recognize its true nature. What we're asked to do here again O son of noble family, this is called the experience of the four wisdoms combined, the passageway of Vajrasattva. At this time, remember your Guru's previous teachings on the showing. If you remember the meaning of the showing, you'll have faith in it, in your early experiences, and you'll recognize them like the meeting of mother and son, or like seeing old friends. As though cutting off doubt, you will recognize your own projections and enter the pure, changeless path of the Dharmata. And through that faith, a continuous meditative state will arise, and you'll dissolve into the great self-existing form of wisdom and become a Sambhogakaya Buddha who never falls back. O son of noble family, child of noble family, together with wisdom lights, the lights of the impure, illusory six realms will shine. The soft white light of the gods, the soft red light of the jealous gods, the soft blue light of human beings, the soft green light of the animals, the soft yellow light of the hungry ghosts, and the soft smoky light of hell beings. These six will shine together with the pure wisdom lights. At that moment, do not grasp or be attracted to any of them, but stay relaxed in a state free from thought. If you are afraid of the wisdom lights and attracted to the impure lights of the six realms, you will take on the body of a creature of the six realms, and you will grow weary, for there is never any escape from the great ocean of the misery of samsara. O son of noble family, if you have not been shown by a guru's instructions, you will be afraid of these images and pure wisdom lights, and attracted to the impure lights of samsara. Do not do so, but feel devotion to the pure wisdom light, sharp and brilliant. So again, although the vision that manifests is different, the instruction is essentially the same. Not to be afraid, to recognize as just the expression of one's own mind, a projection or self-display of one's own mind, and allow ourselves to dissolve into the bright light. And as she says, when this happens in each one of these, in any one of the 6 days of the Bardo of Dharmata, that the best practitioners will recognize this as self-display and merge with the Buddhas. Those of average abilities will be liberated through the power of intense devotion, and the least intelligent will attain enlightenment through the passageway of Vajrasattva, which is again what occurs during the in the 6th day, which is the crescendo of the presentation of the peaceful deities. So that's what we're asked to do, and in a sense, it's no different again to what we do in this bardo of our present life, where over and over again, in every moment, we have the ability to wake up and just deal with things, see things as they are, and to see ourselves as we are, and to recognize that whatever we experience is, in the end, the reflected appearance of our mind itself. So I think I'm going to stop there because this is already, again, a lot of material. The value of reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead for ourselves now is that it's helpful in allowing us to recognize in the when we are in the bardo of dying, in the bardo of dharmata, and what we'll eventually get to with the bardo of becoming. If we can recognize our experience in any one of those bardos, we could wake up on the spot. And it's said that at each point, that when we are able to recognize, that we wake up fully. And so when we're able to recognize, we can wake up. When we don't, there's the danger of continuing, just as there is in our daily life, with our habitual way of relating to ourselves and in the world, in a neurotic way. So that's what I came prepared to say, and if I guess we have a little bit of time, we could have some questions or discussion or whatever people would like to do. Judy? You got to unmute.
When you were reading, it sounded as if you were not in the same book that I have. Is this the one you have?
I'm actually reading from the original text, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. So she's excerpted pieces of that, and I think she's retranslated some of the pieces. Like, I kept trying to change it so it said, "Oh, child of noble family," instead of "Oh, son of noble family." But so there's like changes like that. But it's essentially the same text, except she excerpts pieces of the Book of the Dead, or Liberation Through Hearing, as she calls it, and puts it in the book.
Yeah, she says,
So
"Oh, child of awakened family."
Yeah, she calls it here noble family, and the reason for that is traditionally noble ones are considered bodhisattvas on the bodhisattva path. That's in more traditional Buddhism. But yeah, the basic it's essentially the same idea, that we have the ability to wake up at any point in any bardo experience, and the question is, do we do that or not? But yeah, the translation is slightly different.
Yeah.
Even though it's by the same person, but she's, as I said, for instance, she said that she prefers now using the term self-display rather than projection.
Right.
But it's just trying to point to the same thing.
But there are places where the texts are identical. And if you look at page, in the Tibetan Book of the Dead on page 53, the quote where it ends, you'll find that on page 287 of Invincible Peace. So the texts keep coming together more or less, really working at it, both of them. Bring us both of them. Yeah, when he says, she says, this italicized text on page 53 of the Dead. When through the 5 poisons I wander in samsara on the luminous light path of the 4 wisdoms combined. And you'll find that on page 287 of Invincible Peace. When through the 5 poisons I wander in samsara on the luminous path of the 4 knowledges combined. Just changes it slightly. And she does that throughout you. You can find these 2 texts coming together and then going apart and then coming back together again.
But is the one that Michael was reading from, was that translated by Francesca, or was that written by Trumpa?
Which text are you asking about?
This is Tibetan Book of the Dead. Yeah, she translated this book with Trungpa Rinpoche.
Yeah.
And again, and I really enjoy hearing talks by people who do translation, because you learn something about some of the connotations and subtleties of the language and some of the struggle they have with how do you take this term in Tibetan or Sanskrit and use what English words work the best. And it seems like it's a never-ending thing to figure out what gets across the idea the best. So they're always making some change, it seems.
Yeah.
That's why I give the example, like she says that when she did the translation with Trungpa Rinpoche, she used the term projection, but now she thinks self-display is a better term. But it's the same idea, that what we see and we take to be external is really just our own mind.
Right.
And I was unclear to what extent he was doing her a service and giving her a teaching by working with her on this translation. She was a Sanskrit scholar, and yet at the same time she was very much his student and came here and was very much in awe of him. And so it's very clear to what extent she's contributing and he's contributing and all that, but it was this combined effort on their parts.
Were you there at the same time that they were doing this?
Oh, indeed, I was, yeah. And in fact, I caught an error that she made and pointed it out to her. She was very grateful. She translated a term incorrectly. But that was just a one-off, I just happened to spot that. But yeah, we were very good friends. And so, yeah. She was just, he had arrived in this country, all these people were congregating around him, and she was one of them. But she was a Sanskrit scholar. She taught at the University of London, and when she met him, she recognized the real deal, and she came here to the United States for a number of years to be his student and translator, and translate with him. It was a real privilege for her to do that.
Yeah. Wow.
Carolyn?
Yes, thank you. Illuminating, Michael. I appreciate this. Did you say you have an original translation of the Tibetan Book of the Dead?
No.
Oh,
If I did, that's not what I meant. What I meant is that I was reading from her the translation that the earlier translation that she did about the Tibetan Book of the Dead. So it was original in the sense it was her first translation with Trungpa Rinpoche that John was just talking about.
okay, thank you.
And as I say, in some places she's changed some of the terms that she used when she's included excerpts in Luminous Emptiness.
Good, thank you.
And I know I've told some of the people here this story, but I'll tell it again. It's illuminating about Francesca, that after she published the Book of the Dead, so-called, that's an Egyptian title that was grafted onto this text. The true text is Great Liberation Through Hearing in the Bardo. But after she translated it, I wrote her an email after they had finished the translation, congratulating her on it. And her emailed me back from England by this time. Maybe you'll be proud of me now. And she meant it. So beautiful, I thought. He has studied a lot with another Westerner, an Englishman, who was a very, very early student of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, and a very close student. His name is Rigzin Shikpo. I don't know his Western name. And she defers to him a lot. But he never came to the United States with Trungpa Rinpoche that I know of. And so his relationship, I think, ended when Rinpoche left and came to the US in 1970. It feels like it bears reading over and over again. And it's wonderful, Michael, the way you combine the two texts. I didn't expect that. I could go back and forth. I was holding them both here. And I didn't realize that they borrowed, or the Invincible Peace borrowed so much from the Tibetan Book of the Dead.
Yeah, it's really a commentary on the text, and it's
Yeah.
helpful to understand something of what the symbolism means because, especially in the next chapter, she actually says quite a bit in the beginning about symbolism, but it's a very direct way of experiencing something if we can get into understand what the symbols are.
Yeah.
And the point of all of it really is just to help us recognize. But the more we're able to recognize now through our meditation practice and become familiar with through our meditation practice, the more likely and the easier it is to recognize when we do experience these things in the bardos, however we experience them, whatever we might see.
And I don't know about you guys, but I keep wondering what's going to happen when I get to the bardo. Will I be drawn to the soft lights of samsara, or will I make the correct choice and go towards the brilliant, painful lights of enlightenment?
Yeah. I remember when I was at seminary, we were told that the shrine in particular was very brilliantly lit, that they had like these really high intensity bulbs, and that we were told that Trungpa Rinpoche specifically asked that it be lit that way precisely because the more we're able to recognize brilliance and clarity in this life, the more likely it is that we would identify with that or not run from it in Bardo. It was a very deliberate choice.
Interesting.
That doesn't mean no. Anyway, we just have a couple minutes left, so.
Well, we're 3 minutes from the end. Shall we do the chats?
I think so.
Anything?
If people are able and want to, I think we have discussion group tomorrow night, and invite people to come if you're so inclined. In any case, we'll close with the dedication of merit for the benefit of all sentient beings. By this merit may all obtain omniscience, may it defeat the enemy wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Rigdon's wisdom bloom, may the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled, may all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank
That was
you.
wonderful.
Michael, that was
Thank you so much, Michael. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Hey, Michael. Great.
really appreciate it.
Appreciated.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Michael, that was great.
Thank you. Thank you. We should stop the recording.
Oh, that's right.
I'm still thinking about that one slogan, don't expect applause, so it gets suspicious. Anyway, yeah, it's interesting.